that sure was 2022, the first of its kind even. And now that it's done, at least it'll probably have been done for like 2 weeks by the time I get this video out, I'm just going to talk about the best stuff that I watched from 2022. It can be either stuff that came out in 2022 or I just found in 2022. So this video will be split up into multiple sections. First up is the top 3 of 2022. That's just going to be the 3 best things that came out this year. And it's exclusive to shows and movies because it would get really complicated if I included, every medium in this. And then after that, I'm going to talk about the best movies and shows that came out this year that I watched, which isn't many, but I watched some. And after that, I'm going to talk about the best shows and movies I watched for the first time this year. And then after all that, there's going to be a section for books, music, games, and a channel update for those that are interested. So yeah, without further ado, why delay it? The year's up. Well, it's up in like 3 days. So yeah. Also, just to make it clear, there will be absolutely no spoilers for anything talked about in this video. It's a completely broad and spoiler-free experience. And also, don't think about the ranking of this top 3 all that much. I mean, all of these things I'm about to talk about are all pretty different, so these are just really an excuse to talk about them. So...
Oh. Door City over here.
Yeah.
So I'm putting The Rehearsal at number 3, and that's mainly because I don't really know what to do with this show, but God is it good. So the premise of the show is more or less Nathan Fielder from Nathan For You staging these elaborate recreations and scenarios to help regular people prep for stressful situations in their life. And hey, that sounds all well and good and innocent, but it doesn't stop there. Okay, so I'm not the first to say it, but Nathan Fielder is borderline deranged, and that's really, I think, what makes this show so special, is it's a unhinged person with a lot of money and a lot of time. It's really all in the links that he goes to recreate these situations, or the weird left turns that'll come out of nowhere, and it's like, that wasn't really necessary to do, but it's some of the most interesting TV I've ever watched, so I guess I'll allow it, even though it's probably very morally questionable that you've done that. Absolutely the greatest compliment I can give The Rehearsal is that it feels like an entirely fresh form of comedy. Like, I have never seen something quite like this. The uncanny, offbeat strangeness that comes out of these situations that Nathan creates, it gives so much room and opportunity for not only really unique and different and funny comedy, but also a really different kind of observation of human behavior, which surely there's not enough shows that do that, but there's none quite like this. Because what he's ultimately able to pull out of these situations is so hyper-specific, because these situations are really one-of-a-kind and hyper-specific. It's really just such a bizarre and captivating experience without being aggressively odd. Honestly, my best recommendation is just to go into the show as blind as possible. I know I've probably already spoiled a little bit, but just go in as blind as possible, and I'm honestly kind of terrified to see how he ups the ante in Season 2. But honestly, at this point, Nathan Fielder could probably murder somebody, and if it makes for a good episode, I'd be fine with it. Barry. Bill Hader. The funny man. The wait for Barry Season 3 was so long, but it was so worth it. I actually couldn't quote you on how long it was. It actually could have probably been short, but it felt long. So I won't say much about Barry Season 3 because I really can't without spoiling Seasons 1 and 2, and if you haven't seen Seasons 1 and 2, then please do. But to be vague, the Season 2 finale was a tough act to follow in that the show really could have gone in so many different directions, and I really wasn't sure how they would carry that on, and they carried it on by taking what worked in the first 2 seasons and then doing all that over again, but about 3 times as good. Okay, like Seasons 1 and 2, they have great acting, great writing, they're funny, they're great. Cinematography, really solid. Season 3 is like that, but everything is better. The performances are stronger, and I guess for lack of a better word, they're more raw. The cinematography is even more artful. The directing is very nuanced, and it's restrained, but it also leans into like some very art housey tendencies, and it's just so good, and it's funnier, and the whole season is just all killer, no filler. It's amazing how it's simultaneously the funniest season of the show, and it's also the darkest season of the show, and both of those elements are like in perfect harmony, and it's so good. I'm a big fan of this show. It is really honestly a wonderful feeling. Horses? It really is honestly a wonderful feeling to be watching a show that's not only good, but it feels like the writers and the directors are in perfect control of everything that's happening all the time, and they know exactly what they're doing and where they're going. And speaking of that, is there any room to argue with this number one pick? Like, come on, guys. I feel completely confident in saying that no show has really done it like Better Call Saul. I'm not saying it's the greatest show ever made, but I'm saying it's up there, but like, what show has really done what it's done for as long as it did it, and as well as it did it? Like, fucking hell, dude. I will honestly, and I mean this entirely sincerely, be grateful that I got to watch season 6 play out as it aired. I even paid for AMC Plus. That's how fucking good it was. That's how worth it was. I paid for AMC Plus twice because of the mid-season break. Again, no spoilers if you haven't seen it, although I'm sure like the show has been so memed to death at this point, you probably already know what happens even if you haven't seen it. But anyways, every single season of this show is better than the last. Possibly, maybe season 3 is a little better than season 4. That's neither here nor there. And the fact that it does that while also being a sequel to what is one of the most acclaimed and beloved dramatic shows of all time, and I mean, I think it's better than Breaking Bad, to be honest. I can't really get into why it's so good without spoiling it, because that's 6 seasons of the show, plus 5 seasons of Breaking Bad, plus El Camino, if I really wanted to be thorough. But I think Better Call Saul is just amazing character-driven writing. Bob Odenkirk is given probably the best performance on television, like, ever. It's so good, so subtle. And then the directing is, and the cinematography is as good. Honestly, I think it's probably the best that they've achieved so far. The whole season is a masterclass of how to build, craft, and manipulate the flow of a narrative. And if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Nippy, great fucking episode. I loved it so much. Better Call Saul, season 6, 10 out of 10. Easy. Yeah, that's a top 3. It's all TV shows, but honestly, this was just like such a stacked and varied year for television. I'll talk about more of those shows in a minute. So, and I mean, I didn't even really get to watch that many movies that came out this year, but for this next section, I'm going to be talking about the movies and shows that I did watch. Okay, so first I'll talk about the regular movies that came out this year, and then after that I'll do a big franchise roundup where I'll talk about all the big franchise stuff. The best movie that I saw from 2022 is Glass Onion. It's not particularly close for me, and I know I'm a huge Rian Johnson fan, I'm not going to lie about that, but I think Glass Onion is nearly a perfect sequel. It's not only everything I would want from a Knives Out sequel, but just is like, it's a great time, dude. I mean, I don't think anybody can really deny that. Probably the most exciting thing about Rian Johnson as a writer is how he's constantly remixing genre and story structure tropes into stuff that feels so new, and it always creates for really fresh and lively stories. And Glass Onion was so interesting and unique to me because you have Knives Out, that's a remix and a refresh of the whodunit genre, and Glass Onion feels like a remix of Knives Out. So it's like double remix here, like layers of remixing, you know, like a remix onion. And it's so cool. It has so many deliberate surface level similarities to the original, but it makes you think and interact with the mystery in a completely different way. And it really speaks to how much control Rian Johnson has over this type of storytelling. And honestly, maybe more so than any of that, it just really captures that raw, fun, cinematic fun. That's 2 funs right there, because it's double the fun. Double the Knives Out, double the fun. It's a fun movie. It's just pure cinematic joy. The theater, this is true for the first Knives Out, and it's also, I saw it again for this one. I watched it in the same theater. The happiness in the theater after the credits started rolling, the laughter and everybody turning to each other and talking excitedly, it's just pure good cinema. Like, and I mean pure. And pure as in, it's just really great movie making, and it's really great writing. I can't wait to see what trick he has up his sleeve for the 3rd movie, because otherwise, what's the point? So runner-up for my favorite movie of 2022 is actually going to be a movie that I watched about 2-ish weeks before recording this right now, and that's going to be The Banshees of Inisherin by Martin McDonagh, I think. Let me double check. Also, I'm not actually sure that's how you pronounce Inisherin. The Banshees of Inisherin was directed by Martin McDonagh, and I can say that confidently now. I went into this movie completely blind. The only thing I ever saw from it was YouTube ads that I skipped, and I would skip it after the 5 seconds. So I didn't even really understand what it was going to be, but it ended up being one of the most uniquely sad but also kind of funny movies. McDonagh's last movie, or at least I think it was his last movie, is the last movie of his that I saw, if there's another one. But 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri is not only a great movie, but it was really unique in how tied it was to its location. What was really amazing about it, how in both the script, the performances, but especially how it was all captured on camera, was just how intertwined all the characters felt to the location. Like it was really good at making it feel like a living and breathing world. Which, yes, it's, based in our world, but to make something really feel alive and almost like connected in the bones to the story that you're telling is really hard to do, and it's rare, and it's really impressive, and Banshees of Inisherin absolutely does that, and honestly in a way that is more unique than 3 Billboards, because Banshees is just like such a bizarre story. Okay, not really bizarre in that it's weird, but there's something off about it. It's a little silly, it's a little petty, but it's really amusing, and it's really, really sad, and I loved it. So shortly after recording this video, I saw Babylon in theaters, and it's actually my new runner-up pick. It was such a bold swing for the fences type of movie for Damien Chazelle to make at this point in his career, and it may not be for everyone, but I was so into it for the whole runtime. Everywhere, Everything, All at Once, great movie. I hate that I missed it in theaters. It really was one of those movies that you really just have to stop and think about, like, how did they come up with this? Not only that, but how did they come up with a way to execute this on screen in a way that is this exciting and works this well? It's totally up my alley, and it could possibly become a favorite over time. It's so good. A movie I did get to see in theaters was The Northman, and as a theater experience, it was fantastic. The movie feels so big and operatic. Robert Eggers is nearly unmatched when it comes to creating really captivating and strange atmospheres in his movies. And to see him doing something on such a large scale and not having that diluted down at all is really impressive. In fact, I would be really interested to see how this movie holds up watching it at home on a smaller screen. Because I don't like it as much as I liked The Lighthouse, his last movie, but it's still so cool. And anyone who missed out on it in theaters, man, And in a hell of a double feature, the same day I saw The Northman, I saw The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which is that Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal comedy movie, and you get what you bargain for. I had a good time. Nope. As in, I really enjoyed Nope. I thought it was really cool. Or at least I enjoyed it until I didn't. I'm in the party that thinks the movie kind of falls apart at the end and doesn't really work. But up until that point, it's really unique and it's really fun. Kind of like Us, his last movie. I feel like Jordan Peele is fantastic at creating exciting thriller stuff. It's like this movie is really fun and exciting to watch. It's also very funny. But the bigger commentaries and thematic elements feel a little awkward and underbaked, in Nope more so than Us. It's absolutely a great time, even though I don't really think it's as good as it could have been. Barbarian, a movie, just pure cinematic horror fun. It's incredibly well directed. The concept is really, really gross, but great. I do feel like it loses some momentum towards the end. I love the actual ending, but there's a little section in the second half of the movie where things are heating up, and it feels like the movie just kind of starts tripping over itself for a minute. But other than that, it's really tight. The directing is fun as hell, and it's a really good time. Kimmy by Steven Soderbergh is another movie I really enjoyed. I love that someone like him is doing just like such bare bones and fast productions. And I had a really good time with it, but I have not really thought about it since I watched it all that much. But yeah, if you want like a great tech-themed thriller, it's fun. Then there's Breaking, which is kind of like in a lot of ways, it's a modern take on Dog Day Afternoon, and it's not as good as Dog Day Afternoon, but like Dog Day Afternoon, it has a really fantastic lead performance that really gives the movie so much energy and so much excitement. Okay, not so much excitement, but it's a lot of energy, and it's really good dramatic acting, and it's probably the best John Boyega has done dramatically up to this point. The only problem is that the script and the directing does not really back it up. It feels kind of dry beyond that performance. I fully think it's honestly worth watching just for that performance, but it's just kind of like decent when if the other elements were backing up the performance, it could have been great. Now some movies that came out this year that I didn't really care for. Prey. I mean, I'm not like really into the Predator franchise, but this looked fun, and it was at parts, but it really didn't stick the landing for me. And I don't even so much mean that, it fell apart in the end, but no, like the whole thing, I just got really bored with it really quickly, and I've had no need to go back to it. Gray Man with Ryan Gosling, directed by the Russo brothers, is just pure, unadulterated Hollywood schlock, and I feel so pretentious saying that, but it's so bland and it's not good. It feels like a movie I've seen 100 times before. It feels like a Marvel movie. No, it feels like a non-Marvel movie trying to be a Marvel movie, which makes sense because I know the Russo brothers heavily defined what a Marvel movie is, but it's not good, man. And then Don't Worry, Darling. I didn't keep up with the drama of this movie because why? The drama was possibly more interesting than the movie. It's got great stuff in it, or at least good stuff in it. It's an interesting watch, but the script is leaving something to be desired, and really where it falls apart is that Harry Styles, he doesn't really work in this. I admire that he took like a relatively subversive role for like his big movie debut, but it feels like he's in a completely different movie from Florence Pugh, and Florence Pugh absolutely kills it the whole way through. And you just really can't take him seriously, and the script and the directing doesn't really back him up in a way that it could have, because this could have worked, maybe with like a second draft, it could have worked, but I think they really thought Harry Styles was doing great, and I think they thought that the script was really clever, but it's really not, and you just have a movie that's really messy.
I think it's, my favorite thing about the movie is like it feels like a movie.
Making a movie about.
And then absolutely the worst movie I watched this year, both from that came out in 2022 and that I watched this year period, was Blonde, directed by some fucking. Some of the directing is interesting. There's some really interesting choices made with the editing. The production is really interesting, but it's really overdone and hollow. And Ana de Armas, it's a good performance, but honestly, I would have respected her more if she just steered clear of this period. Okay, now for franchise stuff. This is the fun part. So, superheroes, DC, the Batman. The Batman is good. I like the Batman. Some parts of the movie were not clicking with me on the first viewing, but the second viewing, it's like, yeah, it's cool. It works. It's a really solid movie. It is really close to my ideal live-action Batman. It's not quite there, but it's close. Robert Pattinson, he's absolutely perfect in the role. And really my main complaint with the movie is I really wanted more Bruce Wayne. It's a very Batman-centric movie, which Batman-centric to the extent that it feels very plot-heavy. Not in the way something like a Christopher Nolan movie is plot-heavy, but I really want more slow moments to dig into the characters. It's a very slow movie. I don't know why I said movie like Austin Powers, but it's a very slow movie. But I really don't feel like I get to see how Bruce Wayne exists in this world as much. And I would have loved more scenes. I'm not talking like full-on Batman Begins, first half of the movie, he isn't Batman. But I would have liked more of that, because Pattinson's take on Bruce Wayne is really interesting, and I wanted more of that. Even though it's not my favorite movie, I think it's really good, but it's not my favorite movie. I think it builds an absolutely perfect foundation for a perfect sequel. Like, honestly, there are so many ways that they could do that, and it's going to be so cool to see what Matt Reeves does. Peacemaker, what a surprise. It's so good. It's so much better than a show about Peacemaker starring John Cena has any right to be. Like, honestly, James Gunn has proven himself over and over again. I don't know why I doubted him, but God, it's such a great show. It's so aggressively stupid, and that stupidness is so much of why it works. And it's so dramatically heavy and sad in a way that superhero shows typically aren't, and I just had such a great time with it. It's a very different brand of drama and character writing compared to something like Daredevil, and honestly, I love that there's room for that in the landscape at the moment. The Sandman is DC, technically, I think. I've never read the Sandman books, but I watched a show, and it was fun. Some of the storylines felt half-baked, could have used more development, but the guy who plays Sandman, he's so good and so captivating to watch. And there are a couple individual episodes in this that are just some of the best things that came out this year. You probably know the ones I'm talking about, but it's a really cool, fun show. Not perfect, but still fun. I didn't watch much all of the Marvel stuff this year. I couldn't tell you what came out. I'm trying out this new innovative strategy where I'm only going to watch shows and movies in a franchise that I have an interest in beyond the broad label of the franchise. So that's why I didn't really watch much Marvel stuff this year. But honestly, that sounds like I'm putting Marvel down, but the stuff I did watch I enjoyed. Doctor Strange 2, Doctor Strange, and the Multiverse of Madness. So goddamn good. It's Sam Raimi. I love Sam Raimi. And it's Sam Raimi doing what Sam Raimi does. It's honestly, I really honestly just wanted a fun cinematic ride, and it absolutely was that. And I think there's a lot more going on with the character work in this movie than a lot of people are giving it credit for. That could be the topic of a separate video. It was just joy. I loved it. Thor Love and Thunder, and what is probably my hottest take in this video, I don't think it's bad. I didn't watch it in theaters. I completely skipped it. I watched it when it came to Disney Plus, and I honestly just had a really good time. I don't like Ragnarok. I love Taika Waititi as a director and a writer. I don't like Ragnarok. I don't think it's very good. And a lot of that comes down to how it feels like the comedy and the drama of the movie were constantly at odds. And it was like constantly seesawing between what it wanted to be. There was no real harmony and synergy between the two parts of the movie, at least for me. Thor Love and Thunder avoids this problem by just going so far in the comedy direction, like so aggressively and ridiculously far that the movie is a borderline farce. It's so stupid and over the top, and it's just fun. And yeah, I do think it's fair to say that that since the fact that it did go so silly, that the filmmaking and some of the writing is a little dry, and it could have been far more colorful and exciting in how it executed that stuff. And I agree with that, and I really don't think it's a great movie. And yes, it is kind of sad that in this movie, between Jane's story, where Thor's story is, and what they had with Gore, it could have easily been one of the most dramatically satisfying Marvel movies. And it's a shame that there was really no attempt to capitalize on that. But it's so stupid, honestly. Like, what do you want me to say? I had a good time. And then I didn't watch any of the Marvel shows, except I watched the first episode of Moonlight. I'm like 90% sure that was 2022. I could be wrong. I'm gonna look really stupid if it wasn't. But I watched the first episode of Moon Knight, and not for me. Didn't have fun. Star Wars time. I love Star Wars sometimes. I don't when it's the Book of Boba Fett. So in the 2021 video, the end of year video, I was wearing like a Boba Fett t-shirt, and I was like, oh, as I'm recording this, I'm just a few days away from the premiere of Book of Boba Fett. And now, in the future, with maturity and hindsight, I can say my excitement was a little misplaced. The Book of Boba Fett isn't terrible. Like, it's genuinely not awful. It's just not very good. It's very dry. It's very awkward and stilted. It feels incredibly rushed. Both in that, the story, it doesn't feel like they finished their scripts. It feels like they had some really interesting ideas and some solid first drafts, but they never got to refine it. They never got to expand on the good stuff that they had. And then even with the way the show is shot and put together, it feels like they just sprinted through this production and nothing was really given the care that it needed to be as good as it could have been. I enjoy spending time in this universe still, and Tamora Morrison, I might have said his name wrong, whatever. He's absolutely incredible as Boba Fett still. Like, that's the main draw of the show. But as a whole, it's just really weird and middling, and I don't love it. Obi-Wan Kenobi, on the other hand, also not good. No, that's actually a lie. Here's another hot take. I really liked Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, I want to do a full video on it because I think there's so much to appreciate. I had a great time. Yes, it's not as good as it could have been. It's not as good as it should have been. But is it good? Yes, it is good. I had a good time. Like Book of Boba Fett, it does feel like the production was really rushed, and it's not as artful as it should have been. But man, do you want me to lie to you? See, here's the thing. Star Wars is such a specific franchise, and there's that Star Wars itch, and only very specific stuff from Star Wars can scratch that itch. Mandalorian doesn't scratch it. Book of Boba Fett did not scratch it. Obi-Wan did, and why, I'm sure there's reasons for it, but that's an entirely different can of worms separate from this video. I think I've used that can of worms line in the last video I did. Anyways, it's good. I really had a great time with Obi-Wan. And then Andor, I'm sorry, I have not finished Andor. As of recording this, I've seen about a little over half the episodes. I love what I've seen. Doesn't scratch a Star Wars itch, but that doesn't mean it's not as good as Kenobi. In fact, it's far better than Kenobi. It's just so good. I'll make up my mind properly after I finish it, but I haven't been spoiled, thankfully, so I might talk about it next year. Okay, now it's time for the shows and movies that I watched this year. These are all the ones that I think are noteworthy that did not come out in 2022, but I watched for the first time in this year of 2022. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I went into the show, like a lot of stuff, completely blind, and I had such an insanely good time. I was honestly staggered by how impressive it is, because the story, the plot is not only constantly unfolding and expanding and building, but it splits into a dozen subplots, and there's so many characters, and every single one of them are interesting and fun and unique, and all of it, in some way or another, eventually converges with something else in a really satisfying way. And the closest thing I can think of in terms of just sheer sprawling quality is Avatar: The Last Airbender. So if you like that show, or if you just if you like good stories, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, fantastic. And then another TV show that I watched this year that I loved, but it's also so totally different from Full Metal Alchemist, The Leftovers. God, that show is not easy to get into. It's very dour, it's very sad and moody, but it is so rewarding. If you just want to stick with it, it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever watched. I was kind of flip-flopping on certain elements about the show up until about the second half of season 2, and then there's one episode that I was like, holy shit, that's great television. And then from that point on, I was fully on board. Season 3 is one of the strangest, funniest, bizarre seasons of television I've ever watched. It's so good, I can't recommend it enough. Just please, when you watch this, know it's not easy to get into. It's very heavy and moody and existential, but if you stick with it, it rewards you for sticking with it. And I just love this very aggressively and purposefully unsatisfying type of storytelling, because the show does such an excellent job in putting you in this completely lost and baffled state with the characters and the acting. Specifically, what's her name? I think it's Carrie Coon. She plays Nora Durst. She is insanely good. It's all the performances, amazing. And that God Only Knows needle drop in season 3. Again, man, I was just really enjoying TV this year. So the best movie that I watched this year is probably a tie, or at least nearly a tie, between two movies. And the first movie is Drive My Car, which was a movie I was so excited to watch, and it absolutely lived up to my expectations. I haven't read the Murakami story that it's based on, which is breaking my heart, but it's got a great title, and that's a start. Drive My Car captured something that is really specific in a movie, and it's very rare, is watching it almost feels like reading really silky smooth poetry, something about it, the dialogue and the way scenes are shot. It just feels so here's your mind, and just wow, I can't explain shit today. It's really almost disarming in a way, which really plays well to what this movie is about, and it's just so good. There's just there's such a depth and a delicacy to this movie. It's very patient, it's very slow, but what it can do with just dialogue alone is just so good. And the second movie is Only Yesterday, which I only watched because it shares the director with Grave of the Fireflies, and hey, this one isn't as miserable. It's beautifully animated. There's a great juxtaposition between flashback scenes that capture a fuzzy, warm, nostalgic form of memory, and then the scenes that take place in the present are as restrained and precise as any great live-action drama. It makes for such a beautifully warm yet melancholy vibe, and it's really become one of my favorite movies. And before I finish, I want to mention Game of Thrones. As of recording this, I'm in the middle of Season 6. I'm actually closer to the end. And at this point, I am seeing the cracks in the writing. I know it's supposed to get bad, but I have had so much fun with the show up to this point. And hey, I will probably give my full thoughts in 2023's video. And speaking of fantasy properties, what with Game of Thrones, this was the year I finally decided I was going to read all the Lord of the Rings books, and I did, and I had a fantastic time. I was really expecting it to take me a while to get through all 4 books, both because I'm a slow reader, and also fantasy stuff, it takes a lot to get me interested, and honestly, all 4 books just absolutely flew by. Fellowship's a little slow in places, but they have aged amazingly, and they absolutely live up to the hype. And then I also use that as an opportunity to finally watch the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I had never seen before, and I watched the extended editions, and they were really, really good. I really enjoyed all 3 of them, but I do have to say, I think Return of the King is the only really great movie there. When I say great, I'm talking like really, really great. Like all three of them are really good, but Return of the King especially was just fantastic. And then I tried to watch the Hobbit trilogy. I watched the first two movies, and I think they're about on the same level of quality, but they're also very different. And I honestly have not touched the third movie yet. And yeah, this is separate from the 2022 section of the video. I'm starting to fall asleep. But The Rings of Power, I watched it, and it's fun. It's nice. There's a really great episode. It's like episode 6 or something like that. But I get the criticisms to an extent. Like, I do think the show is a little awkward in places and a little overproduced in places. But I think it's just like a fun, casual fantasy show. I like it. Is that what Lord of the Rings should be to a lot of people? Probably not, but I had a good time with it. Music, I don't have anything written down for this section, really. Early in the year, I decided I was going to keep up with all the new important albums that came out, and I did that for like 2 months and then stopped. Not because I wasn't enjoying it, it's just I just lost interest and was doing other things. Easily the best album that came out this year was The Family by Brockhampton, and I'm biased in saying that. But I think the idea of doing a band album with just one member is really interesting, for one. It is arguably disappointing that there's only one member of the band on the album, but considering the album is about the band and its breakup and its place, and is basically chronicling its rise and fall on a personal level from his perspective, it really drives home the themes of the album, and it's really great, and Fantano is absolutely insane for his rating. The other Brockhampton album, TM, which came out like a day later, not very good, but Crucify Me is like one of the best songs that came out this year, so I'm not complaining too much. Aside from Lord of the Rings, some of the books I read this year was You've Got Red on You, which is one I read at the very beginning of the year. It's a book basically about how Shaun of the Dead came to be and how they made it, and it's a really fun and often funny book, and I personally found it to be incredibly insightful and fun, both as someone who loves Shaun of the Dead and also just someone who's interested in filmmaking, especially that early stage of it. Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World by Haruki Murakami was such a playful, occasionally harsh, dreamy time. This is the first book by him that I've read, and I absolutely want more. It's so matter-of-fact, and the surreal storytelling plays into a deceptively deep psychological presence that was not only fascinating, but the whole thing is just a breeze to read. Beyond the Curve is a collection of short stories that I'm currently reading, and I'm honestly just impressed by just how creative some of these stories are. The metaphors can be a little on the nose, but I'm having a blast, and there's a certain playfulness to the short stories here that's really fun. The Man Who Fell to Earth was a book I read strictly because I just thought the movie was such a weird oddity, and I enjoyed the book, but it felt a little bare in places, and I actually think I prefer the movie just because it gets so much out of the audio and visual part of storytelling. Even though the book is far more subtle, I think the movie makes a far greater impression. On directing by what's his name, not my cup of tea. There's a section of the book where they're like breaking down how to build a scene efficiently. That stuff's interesting, but there's a lot of other junk in this book that I just absolutely cannot get behind. Specifically, there's a really weird chapter where he starts ranting about modern architecture, and he's trying to connect it to film and complain about how directors can be indulgent or not efficient, and it's just so, like, I get what he's going for, but it's so stupid, honestly, and it's very limiting to the medium, and there are so many great movies that definitively go against what he's saying here, and I just don't understand it. It's worth reading just for academic purposes, but it's not very good. And then there's also Better Living Through Criticism by A.O. Scott. And this book was a bit of a headache. It's very overly drawn out. He uses way more words than he needs to say certain things, and I can't really get behind a lot of what he has to say specifically about taste and the role of criticism. But at least it is a thought-provoking read if you can put up with the really obtuse way of writing. Super Mega Saves the Troops is the best thing that I've ever read. Video games. I play video games sometimes, not this year though. Literally all year I just played Team Fortress 2. I tried and failed to learn Europa for like 6 times. Still working on it. I'm very behind on this, but I got Black Ops Cold War finally. Not impressed with the rest of the game, haven't tried the campaign, but I got it just for zombies because I'm finally over Jason Blundell leaving. It's fun. At this point, I've just accepted I'm not going to be able to keep up with new games as they come out, so I just fucking played Team Fortress 2 again. As for other stuff, I'd like to, round up some other interesting stuff that doesn't really fit in any of these specific categories. But I basically just spent the whole year with German Super Mega videos, on an IV drip feed. So that's more or less fried my brain, so I don't really have much to say. Ghost Files was fun. I've really enjoyed the steady drip feed of Channel Awesome retrospective content that everybody keeps making. Like, it's like the same video about the same series of events, but I'll watch it every time just because it's such a fucked up story and I love it. Well, I mean, not necessarily for the the people who are actually involved, but Doug Walker, you know how he is. And hey, that's 2022. I'm about to fall asleep, but words. So when 2022 started, my initial plan was to do one video every single month, and I did that for like 2 months, and then I stopped. My plan for 2023 is I want to do a video every single month, so subscribe for monthly videos. But yeah, I'm going to try to hit one every month, regardless of what that looks like. I have a bunch of different types of videos planned, and I'm going to be excited to see how some of them play out, though some of them might take longer than others. I have a short film that is currently being edited, and I'm very excited to show it, even though it's probably borderline nonsensical, but that's okay. And I don't mean nonsensical in a put-down way. I mean in like a genuine, I don't know what was happening, but it might be fun. I don't know. I'm not a critic. So yeah, subscribe if you want to see that. Right now I'm working on a video about the short film, and then after that, probably something fun. I don't know. Follow me on Twitter for random tweets and updates. Follow me on Instagram for more random updates. And also I want to try to do more photography on there this year. Follow me on Letterboxd to see what I'm watching, and sometimes I write short reviews over there. And then there's probably a fourth thing I'm forgetting. If there is, I will put it in the edit because post-production fixes all. I only had a 4 gigabyte SD card to work with today, which is absolutely ridiculous of me. I don't know why I let that happen. So I've been having to stop the recording like every 15 minutes to switch it out. So I'm pretty tired of that. So I've had my fill. So video, fun, words, speaking. So I don't even know what this video even is anymore. I talked about some stuff. I didn't even really use my script at all. Audacity. I almost accidentally closed Audacity. I would have lost that. Y'all come back now.